right, everybody, welcome back to the arena with me, Matt, and MD, and with another special guest here. This is Lindsay Dalton. Now, Lindsay Dalton is the founder of Inner Alchemy and a certified somatic facilitator and coach, breathwork coach, and not just any breathwork coach, guys. This is my breathwork coach. So this is pretty surreal, pretty full circle. So first of all, Lindsay, thank you so much for being here with us today. Why don't we just start off with who is Lindsay Dalton?
Thanks for having me. Gosh, that is a loaded question. So I've been deeply immersed in the world of somatics for the past 10 years. And that's just a big part of who I am. For anyone listening or watching and they're not familiar with what somatic work is, it's Greek for of the body. So it's just body-based healing. It's just a part of who I am. Yeah, and started with yoga, and we'll kind of get into my journey, of course, but ebbed and flowed and expanded and evolved from there. And I am just on the planet to help other people remember their power and what they're capable of, and I'm also here to just have fun, enjoy my life, enjoy being a human.
So, all right. Well, what do we need to know? What do we need to know about your childhood in order to better understand who you are today and ultimately why you do what you do?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. And my upbringing, my childhood, very much was the initial ultimate catalyst for my awakening, if you will, to being a healer, facilitator, where I am now. So I was raised a Jehovah's Witness. And so a Jehovah's Witness it's a very, very, they fall under the cult category based on their rules and regulations and how they operate. And so I know there's many people out there like me, but generally speaking, it's a very, very, very specific way to be raised. So in a way, I am kind of like an oddball out. It's generally speaking. So it's a very interesting way to be raised and birthed into the world. But from infancy, I was put into a box, and with every layer of my life existence, every layer of my reality was put into very specific parameters. So every layer of everything in my life I was told what to think, how to feel, how to show up, how to carry myself, how to dress, who I can and can't be friends with, what to believe. So I was spoon-fed everything from birth to essentially 20 years old. And so things like thinking for yourself, intuition, free thinking, was just not a part of my reality. It just was not something I was allowed to do, even though it was kind of twisted from birth. Like, oh, this is, we're keeping you safe. We're trying to protect you by telling you how to live. But it's a false sense of safety. So the intuitive side of being human was not something that I had access to until I started to become a teenager, and thank goodness that my natural intuitive feelings as a human started to bubble up to the surface. And then there's kind of that bridge where it's like I started thinking for myself, and then there's the actually taking action based on what I'm feeling and thinking. Whereas a lot of people get stuck with, okay, I'm starting to think for myself, but I'm too afraid to actually make any changes tied to what my heart and my gut are telling me. So moving into teen years, I started to actually start to take small steps towards thinking for myself and taking control of my life. So there's a lot of layers to it as far as the belief system and things of that nature, and it's very deep, very complex, and I had to work through a lot of emotion, fear, trauma, psychological stuff. So it has been quite the journey.
So I guess in like the early steps, teenage years, you start to have freedom of thought. My assumption would be that it wasn't as straightforward that these thoughts were validated or valid. And so I guess where did that validation come from? Like were you starting to notice things within the community, within other people? What was happening around in the world around you that made you feel like, okay, I'm not crazy. This is worth maybe staying attached to and following further.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah, I mean, like I said, thinking for myself was not encouraged. And it was frowned upon in my community growing up. You know, if gossip got out within the church or my community that someone was like thinking or having doubts or thinking differently, there was like this red flag that was placed over their head, and it would get around in the community. So things like that, it was very much frowned upon. And word would spread quickly when you're in a tight-knit community like that, because you're not really allowed to associate with people outside the church that don't believe the same thing that you do. But my saving grace was the little glimpses of reality that I got throughout my life as I grew up. So my parents did put me in public school up until high school, and then that's when the things started to come up for me, and they're like, all right, nope. We're going to pull you out. And,
they messed up.
Yeah. Yeah, shove it back down. But at elementary, right, I was in public school. So I carried that exposure of the real world with me. Combined with, I did see so much hypocrisy. This is something that is still very apparent to this day, meaning there's certain rules and regulations that were instilled in me. And then people in my community and my church outside of church, my friends' parents, my friends' family, my friends themselves, would be rule breakers, sinners, and to the, that's in the very extreme sense in this case. They would not align I believe this, but then their actions would not align. It was something as simple as like dating and exploring sexuality. I mean, even as moving into teenage years, that's something that's so fundamental to being a human, but it was so not normalized. And so that's just an example. As I got older, things like that would start to come up, breaking rules. And so I would see the hypocrisy and be like, this is not adding up. And it just started to compound as I got older, to the point where it was so loud and so apparent that it stretched me in a way that I could not go back. I could not unsee everything I'd seen. And it did involve, I would say the final straw did involve some trauma of my own within my own family. That really was like the straw that broke the camel's back. I was like, all right, this is not all it's cracked up to be. I need to peace out. And so that's what I'm grateful for. And that's an example of how some of the worst, most traumatic experiences for you can be fuel to grow if you choose to see the healing wisdom beneath it with some time. Yeah.
So is there a part of you that thinks, like, had it not gotten so bad as it did, that you would still be in that bubble living that way, whereas like you were almost forced to leave, if you will? Like there's just no way that I could possibly stay after whatever it was that transpired. Yeah,
that's a great question. Who knows? I sometimes will think about that. I think that eventually I would have started to step away and make my own moves and think for myself. But I'm grateful that it happened when I did, at the age. So I was fully out by 20 years old on my own. But I mean, all of my friends from the first 20 years of my life are most of them are still in it, or they're adults now, my age, and they physically have a hard time going to church and whatnot, but mentally they still believe it. It is psychologically, when you are born into a cult, psychologically it is very, very hard to rewire neurologically. And so, yeah. Anyways, long-winded answer to your question. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what were some of the challenges of leaving? Because I guess from the outside looking in, it could be easy for us to assume like, oh, heck yeah, get out of there, right? Like too easy, right? But I think for you, I mean, I would imagine there's a comfort zone you're having to walk out of. I would imagine that, what's the social environment that you're stepping into? Is there one? Is there any social support?
It's a great question.
I know you mentioned the public school, but
yeah.
I would also think that your closest connections were within the cult. So I guess, yeah, what were some of the challenges, and how much courage did it really require of you to make that sort of decision and take the actions necessary to eventually break out?
Yeah.
I mean, in leaving an identity, who's Lindsay outside of the cult?
Truly. Yeah. I had no freedom to be who I wanted to be, or, even imagine or explore that. That's a great question, though, because, I mean, with cults, there's severe repercussions for going against what you're told, right? So they practice shunning, which is, they have a specific term for it, but shunning just is a commonly known term. So you are committed to this religion, and if you choose to leave, you will be shunned, including your family. And so people in this organization are indoctrinated to believe if there's anybody in our community or within even your own family, even your immediate family, if they choose to leave, you have to treat them as if they're dead. And so that is what happened to me. So I have not had a relationship with my mom for 10 years. So I'm now 30. And that's a lot in itself, just this topic of shunning and how that's affected me. My dad, for example, he's an example of how still in the church, but chooses to bend the rules and talk to me, which I'm grateful for that. I'll take it. But of course, it's a very unique situation and a very unique, complicated relationship. But so he came around. I have some extended family that came around. Go ahead.
Does he have to like hide that he's doing that, if you don't mind me asking?
No.
Or just okay?
No. It's really complicated and weird, but there are some people that I'm sure he's aware of this judge. The fact that, if he mentions within his community that, I talked to my daughter, or I saw my daughter, or whatever, I'm sure there's some looking at him sideways. And then there are people that, again, live in hypocrisy, and they attend and they're in it, but they are thinking differently. Like there are a lot of people that we call it physically and mentally out in this cult. There's a lot of people like that in this cult. So those are the people that don't look at my dad like he has 3 heads for talking to his daughter that's shunned. So anyways, and then I've had some extended family that have left within the past 10 years as well, which has been really nice. It's kind of a domino effect. So I left, and then over the years, I've had some cousins and things like that step out, which has been nice to have that support and that rekindling of the relationship. But I still to this day have family that see me and act like in public, and act like they don't know me, like I'm not there, or come up to me and verbally abuse me. Full transparency. And I say that very matter-of-factly, very frankly. And I'm grateful that I have done the work that I've done to brush it off. Like, okay, this is a projection, love and light. So, yeah.
Your relationship with your mother is an interesting one, because I would be very curious to better understand from your perspective, like the menu of emotions and the way that relationship has had to evolve, because on one hand there's probably extreme empathy for, having been a part of that community, to at least understand why she's committed to the shunning. On the other hand, I could also see like a great deal of resentment or frustration of really wanting them to join you, to stay with you. And we talked about identity attachment. Now, in some ways, is there a feeling of like she's chosen this way of life over you? And man, that's heavy. But at the same time, there's empathy, there's compassion, there's forgiveness, right? And so how has that evolved over the last 10 years as you've gotten maybe more emotionally intelligent and, I don't know, I'm putting words in your mouth, but maybe understanding of the situation? Or how has this whole thing evolved for you, that there's so much there?
Yeah, no, that's great. There's so much here. The first thing that comes to my mind is I would not be who I am now and where I am now without somatic healing, which is what I now facilitate, right? But that has been my vehicle to process through, yes, grief, despair, rage. We all have it, but most of us suppress it. But these are all things, frustration, and yeah, all of it, you name it, the full spectrum of emotion. I've felt it tied to my situation. And the only thing that's helped me to truly process is body-based work, so it can come out of my body. But yeah, it's been a journey processing, but I'm glad that I have gotten to a place where I chose to not go around these feelings, and I chose to go through them, because that is intuitively what I knew I had to do. And yes, there is that layer of understanding, because I was in it. I was brainwashed deeply, to view the world through a very, very specific lens. And so I do have that layer of empathy for knowing how she views the world and how she thinks she is doing the most loving thing for me by not talking to me. That's how they view it. It is a very twisted thing, but that's how they're, programmed, is you're shunning somebody that leaves out of love so they come back. And it works on a lot of people. And yeah, so there's that layer of empathy that's been very supportive for me, is just, I do understand. And my healing journey has helped me make peace with what is. Knowing that there, things like this with my mom, my upbringing, it will always bring up emotion to a degree, because I'm a human, we're all human. But it's the severity of the emotion and the fact that it does not have a grip on me. And I've, again, used it as my fuel to grow and help other people.
So if you then get married, So I mean, let's go there, right? I don't know exactly when that journey is, but you could talk through that and decide to eventually leave that relationship. Yeah. So bring us to that part of the journey and just how that transpired.
That's a really good example. So I got married when I was 24. I was out of the church. It's a good example of how things still were imprinted into my system that I was unconscious of. So between 20 and 24, that was my exploration of finding out who I am. I made some dumb decisions. I did. I made some dumb choices, as we all have, because we're all human. But I really did, because I literally had no idea who I was. I was building my life from scratch. So it was quite the journey, but thankfully I made it out safe. But so I met my then partner when I was 23. We got married when I was 24. But that was an example of how getting married young was still normal for me. I didn't think twice about it. So in my former faith, you date to marry, and you get married young. Sex before marriage, it was like one of the biggest sins that you could commit, which is, again, one of the most unnatural things to force upon somebody, in my humble opinion, in that way, with having such severe consequences. So again, if you were to sin like that and it would become public, you would get kicked out of the church and shunned by your whole family if you had sex before you were married. Like, the repercussions are so severe, right? So anyways, I still kind of had that in my system of like, you date and you move quickly and you get married. You just get married. You get married young. Like, there's no why do you wait, And that didn't really fully click for me until I was in the weeds and in a misaligned marriage, realizing that I should have waited. I should have taken my time. And that's really what that relationship was. It was misalignment because I think that it was just taken too fast. And another huge major learning lesson for me, but I'm really, really glad that I acted quickly, again, on intuition. It's another example of how so many of us intuitively feel a type of way, but we don't act on it. We stay stuck. And so, yeah.
Are there parts of your, I'm going to call it past life, just to reference it as.
Totally.
Okay. Are there parts of this past that you've preserved from a moral standpoint? So, for example, splitting up in your marriage. Are there times in your life, such as that one, where you're like, you've preserved a certain moral point of view, and maybe, I'm not saying one way or the other, one way is moral versus not, right? This is subjective to your morality. Were there parts of the past that you preserved, and like, how do you kind of wrestle with that of like, do I want to end this relationship, or what is a sin to me, right? Or what is immoral to me now versus in the past? And what have I pulled any of this? Do I agree with anything from the past that I've preserved to today? And like, how is that maybe your relationship with morality? How has that evolved?
Yeah, it's great. So with how I was raised and how severely, indoctrinated I was, to me, it was taking, the teachings of Christ and the teachings in the Bible and taking it to an extreme, just like twisting, adding on layers, pulling shit out of their ass. There's some teachings I'm like, where in the hell did this come from? So it's all just to control for power. But where I am now, reflecting back on how I was raised and from a moral standpoint, I still very much resonate with the teachings of Christ and the energy of Christ. And from a moral and love standpoint, I mean, at the end of the day, that was fundamentally, Christ was love and wanted to embody that, and kindness and purity and honesty and all of these things that we all should embody, I think, for the greater good of consciousness in the world. But it's also the same goes for Buddhism, right? There's a book that has like one page is teachings of Buddhism and one page is teachings of Christ, and they're like the exact same message. As you flip through, all the messages are the same. They parallel, but they're just from two different teachers. And so from a moral standpoint, that is what I carry with me to this day, are the fundamentals of love and kindness, and not rigidity and fear. Yeah.
And so, well, I feel like I think we all have layers and layers of beliefs to unpack in life, and the more work we do on ourselves, the more we just experience life, the more we they come up. I guess your background is especially unique, and you mentioned when you were married of like, there was still a belief system that I have to kind of work through here that has shown up and caused me to get married earlier. And so how, like, as you've continued to just grow through life, have you seen these like old beliefs, and are they still coming up? Or you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even realize that there's still something here from, my past life or whatever it might be. I mean, I think that can be true universally. I'm just more curious from someone with your background in particular.
Yeah, so it's funny how the most shifting that I've felt within myself and my beliefs that have occurred was my separation and now. for the past 5 years-ish. That's when I started to do the deep somatic work, deep therapeutic, like beyond yoga and meditation, like the deep cathartic releasing and processing. That's when the truly like the even deeper layers of quantum shifting that happened within me was within the past 5 years, on the other side of, coming out of that relationship into where I am now. Really furthering my process of letting go of my old belief system. The ways, for example, just letting go of fear that I'm upsetting God. I believe in God, that letting go of that fear that was very much instilled in me and I carried with me for a long time. Fear that I was going to, end up making the wrong choices, going down the wrong path in my life, that I was going to end up remarried again in the wrong relationship. Fear of that, processing that, letting go of that. Fear of the future. That was a big one. I was raised to believe that the end of the world's coming, and the only people that were going to survive were Jehovah's Witnesses. So anytime I thought of the future, I wanted to shit my pants. Like I would lay in bed at night into my teenage years. I would lay in bed at night like, am I going to survive? Like, have I done enough to be faithful to God where he's not going to kill me? That would keep me up at night. And that's the case for everybody in that religion. So like,
wow, that must be difficult.
Oh yeah.
As you're getting ready to
the end of the world is coming. Like they think it's in that church. If you go talk to somebody, I mean, they're on the sidewalks preaching, passing out their pamphlets. Like I'm sure you'll see them now after this conversation. They think the end of the world is coming any day. They're ready to go. They're like, take me now. Like, so, that fear was with me daily, all day, every day. And so that was, I would say, the biggest thing was just getting that fear out of my body. That took a long time. But what got it out was breathwork, somatics, and completely rewiring my system. Yeah.
Go ahead, Andy. It's easy to hear. I know when you're going to ask a question because it comes off the mic. So when you do that, you go. It's all you.
It looked like you were going to say something, and I'm ready to pivot. The only reason I ever hesitate is because I'm ready to pivot a bit versus follow through. But let's get into the somatic stuff. So first of all, I don't know how difficult, if at all, that was for you to share any of what we just talked about, but it's a good opportunity to remind myself why I'm so grateful for this podcast, because we continue to encounter individuals that are so open and transparent, and a lot of why we started this to begin with. So it takes people like you, Lindsay. Thank you so much. Now we'll pivot to somatics. So 101 it for us, really dumb it down for our audience. I'm over here studying The Emotion Code. It's a book that has everything to do with trapped emotions. I see your reaction.
Yeah,
the timing is crazy.
Synchronization in life is a real thing. It's
crazy. I mean, my
crazy.
cousin had just recommended it.
I'm getting ready to study that.
I'm on chapter 2. But for those who are not even on chapter 1, who have never even heard of this, go ahead and educate those who would listen on what it is that you do and maybe some science behind that.
Mm-hmm. So generally speaking, we like to, as humans, look at ourselves in two parts, mind and body. And that's reflected in healing and health in general as well, is separating mind and body. So working with the mind would be, we live in a very, very mind-heavy world, society. The mind is using our words, speech, to process our feelings, process our past, our memories, talk, vent, talk therapy, right? And then we've got our whole body, which is the other huge piece of who we are, or being a human. And something that most people don't know is that when it comes to processing feelings, emotions, stress, trauma, memories, talking about it does not actually get to the root of the stress, emotion, trauma, past, fill in the blank. Talking helps you to intellectualize and understand intellectually and maybe start to shift your awareness a little bit through talking, like talk therapy, reading a book. But in regards to actually getting to the root of stress, emotion, so on and so forth, we have to go into the root of it where it is stored, which is in our body, which is, again, not something that is commonly known. And so that's somatics. Somatics is bottom up. CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, intellectualizing, talk therapy, that's top down. So we can look at healing and processing, repairing in two different ways. Top down, bottom up. My opinion, based on science and also what I've seen now as being a facilitator for 2 years, bottom up therapy is so much more effective. I'm just going to be that transparent. I say that in the most loving way. It's so much more effective. Talking about it's important, but we are icebergs. We see an iceberg at the top of the surface of the water, but we know that beneath the ocean surface, icebergs are massive, massive, so much bigger than what we can see. We see a sliver. That's us. And so conscious mind, what we can access just through talking, is the iceberg that we can see. And then what's in our bodies is what's under the surface of the water. Yeah, and so somatics taps into what's under the surface of the water to let things come out and to reprocess and rewire.
So you mentioned when you were talking earlier, you said and you emphasized the deep work that you had to do on yourself. That's more cathartic in nature. Yeah. Can you just talk through what exactly that is, what that means? Mm-hmm. I, at some point here, will share my personal experience, sure, because I'm sure people would be interested in hearing how it went. But just explain what that means to quote unquote go deep.
Yeah, and that involves any sort of work, inner work, that does not involve thinking and talking. So somatic work, deep body-based work, emotional stress repair, most of the time you don't talk. Your brain waves slow down, and your brain stem, your body is activated to process, rewire, and release. And there's many different ways to do it. So, for example, the first somatic modality I ever did was yoga. I mean, it's normal when you get comfortable with yoga, you get into a deep stretch, you start feeling things. Memories will come through that you haven't thought about in years. That's a great example. Taking it a step further, my first experience with really, really deep emotional release with my body was body work. So having somebody trained to apply pressure, that's putting it very simply, but body work to allow the stress and tension and emotion in my body to come out. Yeah, and then from there, those were kind of the first two things that got me into the world of somatic healing. And then from there, I was introduced to therapeutic breathwork and trauma release exercises where you can, again, get this stuff out of the body and this is how you also retrain your body how to process stress and emotion.
And so it's interesting because I think about myself, and I remember, it's not that I was getting massages. I don't remember, but I remember whenever someone would I played sports, and so I don't know if we got massages, but I always just remember hearing, you need to loosen, you're so tight. You are so, uptight, you need to loosen up. Your muscles are tight, everything's tight. And as I reflect back, I think that's because, I was carrying around so much stress. Because now I can actually get a massage and, actually kind of enjoy it and not be I can just, feel, comfortable and relaxed. And I guess I'll just share to anybody that's thinking about this work, guys, I would say it is life-altering. That's what I'll say. And that's coming from somebody that's done quite a bit of work on himself to begin, coming into this 4 months ago. I think talk therapy, I'll share my experience, was really good because, for my personal story, I was hiding in the closet. And so just being able to speak to somebody, I guess it didn't really have to be a therapist, but was extremely helpful in itself. But I remember getting to a point a couple years down the road where I kind of felt like I had hit a block of where I just wasn't getting the same benefit. The diminishing returns were kind of hitting in with talk therapy. And so I started this work, and the therapeutic breath work, I would just say it's life altering. You're going to feel stuff you never felt before. You're going to have memories come up you didn't even realize you had. So I'm just, that's just my PSA on breath work. I would highly recommend it to anybody, but why don't you talk a little bit more about what people should expect? Because I know personally, for me, as well as people I've recommended it to, there's some fear. And I remember before my first session, like you remember, I mean, I was like, are you sure I'm going to be all right? Like the body, like she's like, you might feel some things you haven't felt before or things. I'm like, am I good? So just talk through that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, in regards to what you shared, first of all, thank you for sharing that. What I remind everybody is that our bodies remember what the mind forgets. This is part of being a human, part of our physiology, our wiring. Our bodies remember everything the mind forgets. The mind forgets things to protect us. It's just survival. It's just a survival mechanism in our bodies. So that's where somatic body-based healing goes in, and it helps you to bring things up that the mind forgot about or suppressed to survive and to not feel some type of way, So that's why, just touching on your comment about feeling things that you didn't think you were going to feel. It's not a bad thing, but that's why we're tapping into what's been shoved down and swept under the rug and forgotten about. But in regards to fear, it's very valid, and that is just tied to the fact that our brains hate the unknown. Our brains hate the unknown. That's our ego as well. So our ego, I refer to it as the frontal part of the brain. That's where our ego hangs out. It's what's filtering and scanning our environment and making decisions and predicting and everything like that. That runs the show, and that hates discomfort and unknown. And that is what breath work helps you to move through, is fear of the unknown. The other thing that comes to mind is just, and something I tell everybody, we are innately emotional, and so to suppress emotion is it's not good. It's not a good thing, and we see that manifesting collectively for everybody in autoimmune inflammation, chronic pain, things of that nature, and so it's really fundamental to being a human that we tend to our deep layers of emotion. So what I'm trying to say is your body's made to go deep with modalities like breath work. Hypnosis is another example. Your body's in going into trance-like states, sound healing. Your body's made to do it. And these are modalities that will help you heal and bring stuff up. They're ancient. They've been around for thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years for a reason, where talk therapy is not. Your body's made to do it. And so that's kind of the main thing I use to comfort and share with my clients to kind of ease the fear. The other piece of it is, as we breathe together in this therapeutic way, your brain waves are going to slow, you're going to relax, it's going to start to just settle some of that fear, and it's going to quiet the frontal part of the brain, which is your ego. That will just gently, we'll just gently shush it. So that fear just handles itself. The body knows exactly what to do with therapeutic work like this. And so really any fear is just tied to unknown going into it. That quickly we calm that down, and we quiet that very lovingly. So, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot there. I have a lot of thoughts, but One thing I think to call out, though, is if you're listening to this, and because we're using words like therapy, this isn't just, and from what I understand, I've studied some of this, I'm also into the functional holistic health coaching space, right? And so if you're listening to this isn't just healing trauma, as we know it. It's not about just feeling better and feeling more joy. There's a real interconnectedness to our physical health that, if nothing else, if you just want to solve knee pain, or it could be something chronic physically, there's an interconnectedness interconnectedness there that's worth calling out. And then I would just say the second thing is that I'm sort of a before and after with Matt here, because he's done it. I haven't. That ego piece is alive and well within me, right? And so I would, if being in the before picture is something that people can resonate with, which is like, yeah, like there's a reason why I've learned who Lindsay is through Matt months ago, but I haven't gone through with doing the actual work, is procrastination to some extent. Part of it also, the ego is alive and loud in front of my mind of like, gosh, that's really scary and a very vulnerable position to be in, like very easy to put off. I'm curious enough to go and do it though, and you and I can kind of talk offline after this recording, but to just again encourage people that hear this and maybe roll their eyes at it or don't take it as seriously. This is a root solve for a lot of chronic, very commonly known issues beyond just your typical mental illnesses such as depression, and the physical nature of it as well that really stands out to me. So I'll just say those 2 points. So I again appreciate you educating anyone who listens on something that I feel like should be a part of normal curriculum in schools.
Yeah, and that's
well. Hey, man, you know what? All those people, you can say whatever you want about breath work after you've done it. If you've tried it, you've done it a couple times, it doesn't work for you, and you actually do it with the facilitator, fine. No problem. I'm cool with that. But it's the judgment before doing, or not even really like going in with like the right mindset of like, I'm actually going to give this a shot, where I think people get, where I lose, I don't want to say I lose respect and I hold no judgment, but where I struggle a little bit. Because if you do the work, I mean, it kind of speaks for itself. Like it really is what I heard, like a massage for, it's a hack, a massage for your nervous system, I heard, when it comes to yoga nidra, which I thought was very well said. But go ahead, Lindsay, you're the expert, not me. But I just, when it comes to a lot of people which I get, there's speculation.
Mm-hmm.
But the only way to like truly beat speculation to me is like go experience for yourself and then make your decision.
Absolutely. And something I also would challenge is anybody that has tried breath work and did not have a good experience, I think they need to try a different facilitator. Yeah, that is one thing I would really emphasize to anybody, because of the fact that because of our physiology and how our bodies are built and wired, our bodies are made to breathe. Obviously, that sounds really dumb, but like consciously breathe. Our breath is our tool when we take conscious control of it to hack our physiology, to heal and repair. And so we're made to do it. And so if anybody's like, I didn't have a great experience, I would try somebody different. But anyways, one other thing that did kind of come up as you were speaking was just how it's also important that I remind people that we live in a very analytical world, which means that we use our egoic frontal lobe. It's like part of being a human. Yeah, we use our frontal lobe, but like we live in a very egoic, analytical, intellectual world. And that also means that we, again, hate unknown, and we feel like we have to always operate based on the known, which means that we make our reality based on the past out of fear. We don't even realize it. And so through somatic work, quieting the ego, we get comfortable with the unknown. We clear fear from our body tied to our past. And this is the other sneaky part that's so incredible about this type of healing, is you open yourself up to the future beyond unknown and into the unknown beyond fear. I know I'm getting into the weeds here a little bit, so stay with me. But when we clear fear from our bodies, make peace with the past, we don't use the past to dictate where we're going. That's how we connect into our highest, most aligned self. So again, like we use breathwork, somatics to heal emotionally stress trauma. That's just the starting place. You don't stop there. Somatic work is something that, in my humble opinion, should be part of life always, no matter where you're at. You have a nervous system, you have your breath, you have a body, and stress is inevitable, fear is inevitable. We got to process fear, process stress so that we are not controlled by it and where we're going, so that we can grow into our most optimal, highest self. Hopefully that landed. But
yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing is like, you don't have to be in the deepest rock bottom of your life to start to explore this work, right? And I see your eyes getting wide, right? Like, I'm sure that's a common misconception, because it's the way it can get presented at times is like this really, really deep healing journey, and but really it's something as simple as, or not simple, but it can be viewed as normal as just going to the gym and working out, right? Yes. And so do you practice it in that way as a facilitator yourself? Do you practice it regularly? Is it something that you can self-practice?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's an example of like, you go to the gym and you work out, or you do things at different intensities, like making sure your diet is in check, being mindful of what you eat, like relatively whole food base, or being mindful of what you consume in general. That's how you maintain the hard work that you're doing in the gym. Just throwing that out as an example. And so for me, the hard work, the deep work, is the therapeutic stuff. So when I go in and actually have a therapeutic experience, but my maintenance day to day, obviously that's, there's so even good things you can have too much of, right? And so my maintenance is the little ways that I nurture my nervous system, my stress levels, my emotions. I'm at a place now where it's just second nature for me, which is what I help other people to do now too. So these things can start to become second nature. Meditation.
Second nature for me. You help one person.
Breath awareness, being aware of how to do breath work on your own. Tapping. These are all things I teach. Journaling. Just different modalities to help you process stress, emotion, and help you connect into a future higher version of yourself. That's the other piece of it that's huge. And if some people hate the word meditation, like, ew, I can't do that. That's woo-woo, that's weird. Throw it out the window. Close your eyes. It's how you help to already cut out the ego a little bit. Close your eyes. Because then you're forced to go in. And pay attention to what's in here. That's why somatic work, your eyes are closed. But you do that 5 minutes. Sit down, close your eyes, breathe. And that will start to accumulate and signal safety in your body. That's why, it's not complicated. It's just intentional, using the right tools.
I guess last thing for me, is, what's one of the more profound or deeper, more meaningful testimonials that you've received in your time as a facilitator? Is there a story that you can impart on us that you should feel proud of, but also that kind of helps tell how real this is?
There isn't one testimonial that comes to my mind. I'm just generally reflecting. What comes to mind is just the shifts that I see within my clients overall. I mean, people have shared with me, your work has helped me more than talk therapy ever did. Or your work has helped me with X, Y, and Z, anxiety, fear, things of that nature. What stands out to me the most that I have seen and observed, and also clients have shared with me, is just the shifts that have happened in a short period of time in people's lives. I remember I had a client that came in and saw me, and she was navigating through some really, really challenging stuff. And just out of privacy, not going to go into detail, but just challenging stuff. And now a year later, she's planning her wedding. And she's just like the most at ease and just like good. And that's within a year. It was just like quantum shifting. And another example I think of, when I first met this individual, she was kind of on the other side of some religious deconstruction. So she was carrying a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety, a lot of blocks around her career, around money, her romantic relationship, things like that. And I just worked with her the other day, and she walked out and she was like, I can do anything. Like the shift that has occurred for her, she's like, I leave here and I can do anything. And there have been shifts in her career positively, shifts in her relationship positively, getting stress out of her body that manifests as like a fight or flight or a freeze response, getting that out of her body. So it's just like, these are examples of how use the right tools and things will happen quickly for you.
I mean, I'll share my very quick. I mean, it was life altering for me. I mean, I remember one session. It sticks with me to this day. The first session stuck with me because it was like nothing like I've ever experienced. I remember I thought I was going to go work after, and all I wanted to do was just float. I just wanted to float outside. It was a summer day. I remember it was nice. I just wanted to float and just be. Like, I felt like I was on top of the world. I felt so light. I definitely couldn't work, but in a very cathartic way. But the other one that sticks with me is I remember so clearly. People might think this sounds kind of crazy, but go do this work and you'll see what I'm talking about. But it was so clear to me how I've created this reality. My ego. Like, I felt like so separated from my spirit and my ego, and that I've created this version of me that how I want to be perceived and how I want to move through life. But if I have the ability to see that, then I have the ability to change that. And I have the ability to change my beliefs to be more in alignment with my spirit. And so it really helped me separate my spirit from my ego as well. Those are a couple of things that I noticed. You had mentioned your highest self. Mm-hmm. Who is the highest aligned self of Lindsay?
Yeah, and you using the word spirit, to me, that's all the same thing. It's your higher self separate from ego. Highest version of me, I feel like it's where I am today in comparison to where I've been. And that's all that I can ask for. And my work helps me to continue to grow into an even higher version of myself. So I have my blinders on. Cut out the noise, cut out fear, be okay with unknown, and really, I don't ever underestimate now where I'm at now, how good my life can get. And it is reflective in things that I've been able to call in for myself, going from a really, really unhealthy, misaligned relationship to now one that, feels like it was out of a dream, truly. Like that much alignment and safety, which we all deserve, but it was only because I chose to go in and heal deeply. That's what's on the other side of some hard work, is a deeply aligned life. Yeah.
We ask this every guest as we wrap up. So first of all, thank you, Lindsay.
Yeah.
Just for being open, and you have such a calm demeanor, which I think is reflected by a lot of the work that you do on yourself. What in life are you most proud
of? The ways that I've been able to rewire, and as you now know, some of my story, I feel like my old brain was plucked out of my body and a new brain was plopped in there. That's how much of a quantum shift, multiple, I feel like I've gone through. Where earlier, Mike, you used the word past life. I literally say that a lot. I feel like look back on my past, it feels like a different life, because of how separated and healed I am from it. Not from a place of suppression, but peace. Yeah, I would say that's my biggest thing I'm proud of.
Amazing. Lindsay Dalton, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate both of you.